Hi, thanks for joining the breakdown. This is James Sayer, your host. Tonight, we're talking about Julian Assange. That's right. He's the founder of WikiLeaks, which was founded in 2006 as an anti secrecy organization dedicated towards revealing corruption and wrongdoing by government organizations across the world and corporations and the powerful in general. He's been hailed by many as a hero, anti secrecy hero, revealing wrongdoing and corruption by governments and the powerful. But he's also been condemned by many for revealing innocent people's private information and revealing vital national security information, especially that from the United States, which he's had a particularly dedicated focus towards revealing government information from America. Some believe he's a hero. Many others believe that he's a villain, and he's been charged with 18 charges. He's been indicted by the federal government on 17 counts of espionage and one count of conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. So we're going to talk about those charges a little bit. So the basic question here is, do the charges have merit? Right, right now, currently, Assange is awaiting extradition. Uh, the Supreme Court in the UK, where Assange is currently being held in Belmarsh Prison in London, has basically determined that he can be extradited to the United States. But that decision has now been sent for final decision by the Home Secretary, Priti Patel. Uh, and so the Home Secretary still has to decide, make a final decision. And even if Patel decides to extradite Assange to the United States, Assange can still appeal that for judicial review to the English Supreme Court. So it could still be a while, and who knows? It's completely possible that Assange may never be extradited to the United States. Basically, the primary issue, the main concern that has held up extradition at this point, has been uh, that he has suffered from depression. There have been conflicting accounts on whether that depression is moderate or severe. Uh, Assange's experts saying it's severe and life-threatening. Uh, the the experts for the British government found it to be more closer to moderate, but they are have been and are concerned about U.S. prison conditions and how that might affect Julian Assange. Uh, Many regard U.S. prison conditions in the United States as cruel, and particularly for uh, people awaiting trial on espionage or terrorism charges can be subjected to what they call SAMs, which are special administrative procedures, which basically is like um, putting someone in isolation. It's like isolation on steroids, where someone can be held in isolation indefinitely for months or perhaps even years, uh, and where it's an even more strict form of isolation where the Department of Justice restricts who can visit you, and the people who can visit you are only your like close immediate family and your lawyer. That's it. And they can be monitored. They can actually be monitored. This was something that was passed after 9/11. They can be monitored while they're meeting with the prisoner. So even their communications are subject to being listened to. There's no privacy in communications because of this terrorism espionage aspect of it. And there's lots of civil rights and human rights people who are obviously very concerned about the abuse of that, the potential for it, and the abuse that has occurred. It's documented, and it's basically special administrative procedures are, can be approved by the by the Attorney General of the Department of Justice, and with very little justification other than saying, "Well, here are the These are the charges. This person is suspected of terrorism and is a danger to the United States." this person is suspected of espionage and can reveal, dangerous information if they're not, held in special administrative procedures. Uh, uh, so it's a serious concern that they don't want to turn him over if they fear that he is going to be so isolated. Many human rights advocates believe that type of treatment is a form of torture. And there have been many interviews. There's actually a good article in the Intercept about it that talks about the dark side of special administrative procedures, and it's really it's disturbing. It's troubling, and it may be necessary, but it needs to be better regulated because it's completely up to the sole discretion of the Attorney General, and it appears the way it's been used, it's often used to coerce uh, plea deals or confessions from prisoners suspected of crimes pre-trial, and we've seen that post post plea or post trial. Once the person is convicted, that those special procedures are removed. That has happened on numerous occasions, which indicates that they weren't necessarily the threat that they were uh, painted out to be by the Department of Justice, but it's a way to try and coerce someone into confessing. The problem with coercion is it can be something like that. That someone being isolated in total isolation from other people for months or even years at a time, of that nature, I mean, can have a severe impact on someone's uh, psychology. And Assange reportedly does suffer from Asperger's syndrome and is already suffering at least moderate form of depression in prison. So there's concerns about his health and well-being, which are justified. So this is a strong argument for we need to take better care of our prisoners, right? So that people are willing to extradite people who should be sent here to be tried, uh, that they're willing to send them here because UK is one of our closest allies. Really is our closest ally, actually, and it shouldn't be an issue for them to extradite him here, but it is, and it is because of that. So that says something about us needing to the importance of us needing to govern our affairs better, so that our allies will better cooperate with us, and the importance of uh, you can get much better cooperation with and from your allies if you are a rational and reasonable and humane partner versus if you're a cruel lunatic. So just that's a good thing to talk about. So anyway, we got the 18 charges that were brought against him. It was from the original charge was the one charge of the conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. That was a secret sealed indictment that the grand jury uh, had in 2018, but it was released in 2019, and then the following month, the 17 counts of espionage against Assange followed after that. So the conspiracy to commit computer intrusion that came out first, a lot of people were impressed with that because I thought, okay, this is not from the Espionage Act. This is narrowly defined. Okay, the problem with using the Espionage Act is it's a very broad act, and so it hasn't been used against journalists because the Supreme Court's approach has been to allow the United States government to try, give it broad authority to keep its secrets, right? And how to do that. But it also gives the press, you know, considerable leeway with publishing information and receiving classified information, you know, once they get it. So that way, the government has an incentive to keep it and an ability to keep the information. But if they lose it, journalists aren't going to jail for publishing, vital information. And that's the concern about. That's been a major concern from uh, press advocates and human rights advocates and a lot of legal scholars in general about prosecuting Assange on these 17 espionage counts from the Espionage Act is that it criminalizes activities that, in many ways, journalists do engage in. All right. So here are the 17 charges from the Espionage Act. One count for conspiracy to receive national defense information, just receive it. All right. Of 3 counts of obtaining, all right, national defense information, just obtaining it. All right. The conspiracy to receive it and then obtaining it in itself, 3 counts of that. And then 13 counts of actually disclosing it, disclosure of national defense information. Of course, the worst of all, revealing it to our enemies. All right. So in 2010 and 2011, WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, with the cooperation of Chelsea Manning, who was a private in the U.S. Army, was an intelligence officer in Afghanistan, uh, they leaked somewhere in the neighborhood of 750,000 plus documents from the United States government, many of them at the secret level, that detailed all kinds of information about the Afghanistan war, the war in Iraq, as well as private State Department communiques across the world. Uh, on the good side, it revealed, so say social benefit side, it did reveal that there was footage that was revealed from 2007 of a shooting in Iraq from an Apache helicopter, uh, with American soldiers shooting from the Apache helicopter, shooting innocent people. So essentially committing a war crime that had not been disclosed to the public before, that had occurred in 2007. So um, Manning and WikiLeaks helped reveal that. They helped reveal much higher civilian death toll counts, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, that had not been disclosed by the government. So that was something important that the public needed to know, that they were being kept in the dark about. It also revealed that Iraqi security forces were involved in torturing prisoners of war. It revealed that. And in general, so that's what that leak did. That's the good side of it. The bad side of it was, um, it also revealed uh, sources and methods of the United States Department of Defense and U.S. intelligence in their wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as uh, many secret communications between State Department employees across the world, with many private informants and confidential discussions with people's personal information revealed uh, to to the entire world. And initially, when they were published, when the information was published through different newspapers like the New York Times, the Washington Post, a lot of that information was actually redacted. But when Assange and WikiLeaks published it later in 2011, that information was not redacted. It was all revealed. So you've got all kinds of spies and human intelligence sources in Afghanistan and Iraq, and other people that were cooperating with the United States secretly, that were completely given up by Assange, completely betrayed by Assange and Chelsea Manning. That's why Chelsea Manning was sentenced to 35 years in prison uh, on charges from the Espionage Act, for doing that, because even though they did a good thing, right, in many respects, they revealed some bad stuff that we needed to know about. They also revealed some really important national security information that was very damaging to the United States. Difficult to assess how damaging, in fact, because there was so much released. Um, and here's the problem: is that WikiLeaks has their it is a radical transparency organization. They believe in basically just revealing it all, get it all out there. Don't redact anything. That is their approach, and they have revealed in their disclosures, um, all kinds of people's private financial and medical information unnecessarily, and all kinds of that one of their favorite things to do is to go after the United States government and the intelligence organizations and try and publish any of their information. You can imagine that the United States government would have a problem with that. Uh, so anyway, there's a lot of people that consider Julian Assange a journalist, right, and a publisher. Uh, and though he's not a journalist, in that he doesn't write for a paper and he doesn't uh, He doesn't really subscribe to journalistic principles for that matter either. Uh, but he is a publisher in that he does publish uh, information that he receives from hackers, basically, sometimes Russian hackers, from Russian intelligence, working from Russian intelligence, providing him with information, often sometimes from the United States, that he will then has published on WikiLeaks. Um, so the interesting thing is that, and he doesn't publish just on the United States, but that has been his primary focus, the United States and its allies. He has published information on Russia, but it's been a minuscule fraction, uh, in the extreme, by any comparison to what he's published or sought after for the United States. And I mean, all through 2015 and 2016, he focused solely on getting information, uh, you know, getting hacked information from the Democratic National Committee and from Hillary Clinton's campaign to help Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton in the presidential election. That was his entire focus. He ignored all other leaks, all other stories. He ignored damaging information about Donald Trump. He ignored damaging leak information repeatedly about Russia in the past. He has published some information about Russia. We'll give him credit for that, but it's been a drop in the bucket by any comparison to what he's done with the United States. He's focused intensely on revealing whatever information he can from the United States government. So you can't blame the United States government for thinking he's a bad guy and wanting to prosecute him. The problem is that, and he is guilty of what they accuse him of being guilty of. The problem is that the Espionage Act is too broad. It, even though it has not been used against journalists, it could be. It's just that thus far the Supreme Court has chosen not to take that route. But if you had an unscrupulous president and you had an unethical Supreme Court, which is not outside the realm of possibility these days, and a Congress unable to uh, manage them, uh, check their powers, um, then you've got a situation for extreme abuse, where you can have reporters and journalists and newspapers, publishers, uh, prosecuted under the very broad laws of the Espionage Act just for reporting information that's been given to them from a source. So yeah, it's definitely a crime if you're a federal employee who's taken an oath of secrecy, uh, and sworn an oath to defend the Constitution, uh, and you promise not to reveal any secret information. Then you can expect to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and you should be. That is the only way we can protect secret information. If we don't do that, then our intelligence organizations are toast. If there's no punishment for people who leak information and break the rules, then uh, then then no intelligence organization on the planet could work. And that's it's not going to function. And no country in the world can safely function without an intelligence organization. Now, we can definitely make the argument quite confidently that the United States should often engage in intelligence activities more ethically and compassionately than it does. That is certainly without question, and that's definitely fuel for a topic of probably numerous episodes that we can discuss. But here the focus is: are there merit to the charges? Are it was say is there merit to the charges against Assange? And basically, yes, there is merit because while the activities that he engaged in are very similar to being a journalist or a publisher, there are marked differences, and I think that's why, even though that's why Biden has chosen to allow the charges to stand, not drop the charges against him, because I have no doubt he realizes the potential threat to the First Amendment and to journalists by prosecuting someone not a government employee. Usually, the Espionage Act is used against government employees that break their contract with the United States government and reveal classified information. Um, that's usually how it's used and used most effectively and successfully. It has been abused, most notoriously right after it was enacted in 1917. Uh, they, during World War I, President Wilson made sure that they put as many anti-war activists just for in jail in prison for protesting against World War I, and the Supreme Court approved it, uh, ruled that protesting the war was enough of a threat to national security that it justified. See, this is a horrible, horrible, inexcusable decision by the Supreme Court, but they made it. They do it. They've done it many times before, and they'll do it again. They're doing it. They're doing it now. Um, but that uh, a lot of anti-war activists just for handing out a pamphlet, saying, an anti-draft pamphlet against the war. You go to prison just for that, and people did for years. Seriously, that's real, and it has been abused. The government has been much more judicious and wise about how it's used it in recent years, but it could definitely be abused. It needs to be reformed. It needs to be uh, reformed in a way so that it protects journalists better, that it clearly specifies, gives protections for journalists, publishers, and whistleblowers, right? But also, at the same time specifies that if you are, engaging in, you know, trying to disclose national security information to harm the United States, you will be prosecuted for it. And this isn't a game. You know, don't play around with there's a lot to criticize about, U.S. intelligence agencies and U.S. foreign policy in general, but it is illegal to hack. Hacking is theft. It's illegal to break into government computer systems of any country, including the United States. All right, that is illegal. It is an illegal hack. Now, sometimes you can say there can be justifications for a type of ethical hacking where you hack into an organization or a government organization to reveal wrongdoing. There's a strong ethical and rational argument for that you can absolutely have, and that the law needs to take into account, which doesn't very well at this point. The Espionage Act does not have a component in there that takes into account uh, the social good of your disclosures. Only that you disclosed it, only that you conspired to receive it and to disclose it, and that's it. So yes, it could be used against journalists, and so this would set the precedent for that to happen, right? And as long as we have a rational, ethical Supreme Court and a rational, fair-minded president, that would never be a problem. That would never be an issue. But we know that that's not necessarily always the case. In a couple of years, in a few years from now, we could have a lunatic president again, and we could have an even more out of control Supreme Court than we do now. So that must give the British court and the British government pause, right? That must give the Home Secretary pause when he considers, not only should I send Assange to an American prison where he may be abused according to uh, now the United States has actually said that they would not subject him to special administrative procedures unless he does something subsequently that requires them to do so. So they could basically promise not to do it, but they can take it back if they decide they should take it back. If he does something they feel that justifies them employing those special administrative procedures, basically where, and it's like if you read a book or something, they got to destroy the book immediately. You can't pass it on to anybody. Things like that. You can't. You have no interaction with anyone else, right? And your relatives and your lawyer, if they talk to you, they can't tell anyone what you said in those conversations. They can't reveal that to anyone. And if they do, they can be prosecuted for it. And that has happened. There has been a lawyer who was prosecuted for revealing information to the press that she had from her client. And she did go to jail for it. She did go to jail, and then she was released on a compassionate release because she had cancer and she died. But she went to jail for revealing a discussion with her client uh, when she'd signed an agreement uh, not to disclose that conversation, right? Because it was part of a special administrative procedure. Uh, so it's pretty brutal. It's a pretty intense, and like I said, there's a justification for it. It's basically designed. Those extreme procedures are designed for, uh, the like a crime boss, not being able to give orders, right, to target people and things like that. They can't communicate without it being tracked, right? And that the person who's given communications, like those communications are monitored, and if someone does communicate them, they can be they can be charged for it. So there's a reason, yeah, and you can see that being applied to terrorists or even spies, right? But you can also see how it could easily be abused. It has been abused, so that needs to be reformed so that there's better checks and balances, so that it's not abused and it's not used unfairly, right? That'll get better cooperation from our allies to extradite people to us like this. Um, but all right, so here's the bottom line. Uh, the Assange basically he's done some good over the years by revealing corruption, but he has. I mean, he did. He's also done some bad. I mean, he he weighed in for you know Donald Trump. For 2 years basically. That's all he focused on doing was trying to get him elected to be Hillary Clinton. Uh, he's defended Vladimir Putin. He's taken money from the Kremlin. He had a show that had 12 episodes that was on Russia Today called The World Tomorrow. That was a pretty anti-American show. Um, but it's not a crime to be anti-American. It's not a crime to criticize America because America needs to be criticized and our wrongdoings do need to be held up. That's not a crime. Um, what is a crime and why the United States is going after him so hard is because he didn't just receive information, right, or conspired to receive information from his sources. He aggressively recruited hackers. Like he aggressively recruited people that were within the government and even aggressively encouraged people to join the government to then betray secrets to WikiLeaks and coached them on how to do it. And and of course, with the conspiracy to commit computer intrusion, that alleges that he actually himself tried to help, he himself or actively with other people tried to help Chelsea Manning uh, break a password, crack a password um, to gain easier access to information, make it easier for Chelsea to track information, find information without being tracked herself. Um, there's some disputes about that. So there's some that is in one of the charges in the indictment, one the charge for conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. Uh, there are two experts who have testified in separate proceedings that if Manning's testimony is correct, which is that Assange only had half of a password, um, that he would not have been able to come up with a way to crack that password. He would need the full thing, and that it would even if he had been able to help crack the password, which they have said it's not possible if he's only given half. That even if he had, it wouldn't have mattered because Manning already had all the access she needed to get all the information that she gave him. So it's irrelevant. But the point is that it appears that he actively and aggressively tried to hack into uh, the U.S. government computer and was involved in doing that. And he hired hackers, he recruited hackers, and WikiLeaks has, in many respects, operated like a foreign hostile intelligence organization targeting the United States. And like I said, it has revealed a lot of corruption. It has not just the United States, but from other countries, and it has done some good. But it's also done uh, unspeakable damage to a lot of people, not just spies working for America across the world and other sources for the U.S. State Department. It hasn't just made things harder for the CIA to do its job or the State Department to do its job. It has, but it has carelessly and unnecessarily released private information, damaging private information on hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals without any justification. They could have done redactions, they just carelessly didn't. And that, so, that's and a lot with people have been hacked. There have been reported stories of people being hacked by financial information revealed by WikiLeaks. So uh, publishers are accountable and should be responsible for what they publish and how they publish it. And he has aggressively pursued uh, top secret information from the United States government uh, as his primary focus. Um, and in fact, he's even defended Vladimir Putin and said, all right, that when the Panama Papers came out in 2016, he criticized the Panama Papers because they revealed that Putin had $2 billion stashed away offshore, and he said that was a U.S. attack to delegitimize Vladimir Putin, an unfair attack. So, and having also taken taken money from the Kremlin to do his show, uh, that he's not exactly a reliable, Trustworthy source. Again, he spent 7 years in the Ecuador embassy between 2012 and 2019, uh, evading British authorities, um, because he had evaded an international arrest warrant for three separate investigations, from Sweden, two regarding sexual assault, one regarding rape. Uh, those investigations were eventually dropped because he ran out the clock. He stayed in the embassy long enough that after 5 years, the two assault investigations were dropped, and after 7 years, uh, the yeah, after 7 years, they dropped the rape investigation because they couldn't get him to testify, because he wouldn't be involved in the investigation. And the in 2020, the rape uh, statute of limitations ran out. So he ran out the clock. So where some people argue that he's a victim of unfair due process or a lack of due process, in reality, he is a fugitive from due process. He should have submitted in 2010 and 2011 to the authorities. We're all, as law-abiding citizens, duly obligated. Uh, if the police want to investigate, you go to the police station, you cooperate with the police with the investigation, you answer the police honestly. That's what you do. That's what a good person does. A person's trying to be a good, decent citizen. Um, don't lie to the police. Go and testify. Um, and he didn't do that. And he made the excuse, well, this might be, the United States is going to try and, have me extradited from Sweden. But that's actually nonsensical because if he had been extradited to Sweden, for him to be extradited to the United States, he would have had to get extradition approval from both the UK and from Sweden, not just Sweden. So it would have actually complicated the extradition proceedings even more so. It was an excuse to avoid investigation or prosecution, and maybe the charges are trumped up. Maybe they are politically motivated, but the women who brought the charges didn't think so, and the Swedish authorities didn't think so either. Um, but he will never officially answer for those crimes because he ran out the clock. Uh, but the supposed suffering that he experienced for the 7 years that he spent in the Ecuadorian embassy is duly deserved, and the year that he spent in prison in Belmarsh prison in London was duly deserved because he promised not to skip bail, and he did. He broke the law, and that's a year prison right there. So he got that. Now he's being held there until they decide if they're going to extradite him or not. If they decide not to, he'll go free. All right, and that could happen. That could totally happen if they decide, and they might be trying to decide, are they going to treat him right? One, and they may be waiting to decide how long is it going to take to try him, right? Because it's, I'm sure they imagine it's one thing if he's tried under the Department of Justice under Joe Biden. It might be a completely different thing if he's tried under the Department of Justice under, let's say Donald Trump or someone like him, maybe even someone worse. How well will he be treated then? They may be considering that, right? We've soiled our reputation so badly. We're not the reliable partner we once were. Right? A lot of our allies have to think, well, okay, we're better now than we were a couple of years ago, the United States, right? Because we have a more sane president, um, and some more sane attempts at policy going on right now. Just a more reliable partner that you could count on. You didn't know what you could, just didn't know what Trump was going to do. Completely unreliable, not to mention unethical. So yeah, this is an improvement, but that could change again in another 2.5 years, right? So they have to weigh that. So these are serious things they have to consider uh, when deciding if they want to send him back. So anyway, the bottom line is this: uh, it's not clear to me if he's guilty or not, or if he should serve time for prison. It does seem pretty obvious that he has tried to hurt the United States, and he does, have a heavy anti-U.S. bias, but that's not necessarily a crime. But if he's engaged in the espionage against the United States, that is a crime. Um, Journalists have been protected from engaging in those types of activities, certain, receiving, classified information from people who, are divulging it, uh, arguably traitors. Um, some would argue, but often also whistleblowers, right? And that's the problem with the Espionage Act. It doesn't have strong enough protections for journalists, publishers, or whistleblowers. So that needs to be reformed no matter what. No matter what happens, that has to be reformed. Then, uh, then we can really go after espionage. We can go after spies better. We can go after hackers better. We can go after uh, unethical. Um, Slash virtual almost criminal, publishers or unethical pseudo journalists carelessly revealing information while protecting, ethical, um, better protecting, the ethical journalism versus, people engaging in espionage, pretending to be journalists. The problem is that the Espionage Act is just too broad and it could too easily be abused. So ultimately, what needs to happen is those 17 charges need to be dropped. Keep the conspiracy to commit computer intrusion, right? There's evidence he may have engaged in that. Perhaps that may not be true. He may not have been able to engage in the hacking that they allege he was able to without the full password hash, but that's assuming that the testimony Chelsea Manning gave was truthful, which we don't know. The one way to nail it all down is settle it in court. It shouldn't be decided by journalists. It shouldn't be decided by talking heads. It shouldn't be decided by hackers. These types of matters should be decided in one place, a court of law, and settle it there. But because the 17 charges from the Espionage Act, charging him on those, trying him on that, is if he's convicted, it's too great a risk it'll be used against legitimate journalists down the road. Reform the so basically need to drop him. Right. The only way you didn't have to drop him is if they were able to basically pass a reformed Espionage Act before they tried Julian Assange, which may be possible. He might not be extradited here for months or maybe years, theoretically, but it's not easy to pass a bill in Congress either. So theoretically, it's possible. But practically that's another matter. Probably not. It's not very likely that that's going to happen, but it should happen so that journalists, publishers, and whistleblowers have better protections than they do now, and that will allow for us to better go after hackers and essentially spies and criminals masquerading as journalists and um, humanitarian publishers that will allow us to hold people to account for behaving criminally with people's private information, not just individuals, but governments and organizations. Stealing their stuff is a crime. And there does need to be, we do need to come around to looking at, all right, that there are justifications for sometimes, information should be stolen, should be hacked. Sometimes private information, confidential, secret information should be divulged uh, to reveal, uh, war crimes, um, or severe corruption. Uh, but it has to be done the right way. And they do have internal reporting protocols for that. Those are criticized, rightly so, as not being robust enough, and that people who do report stuff internally can often have retribution against it professionally. That's also true. Uh, so yeah, we need stronger whistleblower protections, right? We and stronger reporting requirements, stronger authority for attorneys general to look after our intelligence agencies and make sure they're not abusing their powers, right? When Assange published, the WikiLeaks published Vault 7, which was a ton, which was millions upon millions. I don't even know how many files it was of secret CIA programs, including special hacking tools that they used. He published that in 2017. Uh, the CIA was furious. Mike Pompeo went crazy, and the CIA was considering this. This was from a story that was broke by, of all places, Yahoo News broke the story, but it has been confirmed by many other sources by now, um, that the CIA was in fact considering trying to kidnap him from the Ecuadorian embassy between 2017 and 2019, and trying to kidnap him and possibly even kill him. And it was basically the lawyers and the National Security Council that killed it of the Trump administration. They're like, this is nuts. The lawyers in the CIA thought so too, but Pompeo was trying to do an end run around them. And basically, Trump and Assange, or Trump and Pompeo wanted Assange dead or kidnapped and rendered back to the United States, for prosecution. But ultimately, the White House lawyers said that's nuts, shot it down, and it didn't happen. But it was considered, and so that's another reason why the British government might be doubtful about wanting to send Assange back to the United States custody. Um, and the United States has promised that he won't be sent to a supermax prison, that he won't be subjected to SAMs unless he does something that might require them to employ them, but that if he is convicted, that he can serve whatever time he's convicted of in Australia. So that's good. That's a nice thing to say. Um, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. They may extradite him out. We'll find out. But either way, they should drop the charges, because the likelihood is that who knows when they'll reform the Espionage Act. That that charge that trying him on those 17 espionage charges will be too great. That precedent will be too great a risk to U.S. publishers. We'll just say publishers and journalists across the world. It'll have a massive chilling effect. It sets a precedent of putting on trial uh, people for engaging in activities of journalism and publishing. Even though there was a bunch of stuff that Assange was doing that was not journalism or not publishing, like recruiting hackers, hiring hackers, right? Coordinating with hackers. Almost he's like a director of hackers or a hacker of hackers. He's a hacker himself. He was actually convicted of hacking into U.S. government computer systems, including NASA's, when he was a teenager. But he was essentially put on probation because he was a youth. He appears not to have taken the right lessons from that. But that doesn't mean he's necessarily a spy or an agent of Russia, uh, though his interests have frequently lined up with Russia's. And like I said, he's tended to favor. He's had no problem taking uh, defending Vladimir Putin or taking the Kremlin's money, and he's more than willing to turn a blind eye to misdeeds from Russia, focus on the United States. That's not a crime either, right? But it's not it's not a vindication. So he should be tried on the computer intrusion charge. It could fall apart. He may get off. He may get off free. He could get off free if he's not extradited, and UK decides to let him go. He could get off of that, or he could be found innocent and go free, after trial in the United States. Either way, the U.S. has already greatly degraded WikiLeaks. They've it's been the Central Intelligence and National Security Agency and other organizations have been at work on WikiLeaks and will be at work on WikiLeaks and Assange probably for the rest of their existence. If you target the United States, uh, and aggressively seek out publishing all of our secrets, you better believe, we're never gonna, not necessarily harass you, but we're gonna keep an eye on you basically for the rest of your life. And you brought that on yourself. Uh, that does not justify attempting to assassinate you or kidnap you. That type of stuff, that's like last resort type stuff that should almost never ever be used. And unfortunately, we have used it too much and abused it. And that's why concerns about, our intelligence organizations, there is a lot of information there that should be kept secret. There's a lot of information that should be not kept secret, that should be revealed, that's overclassified. And it's not revealed, not because it shouldn't be, but because it protects people who've committed wrongdoing inside the government or inside an organization. It protects them, right? Sometimes that does need to be revealed. That's why we need stronger protections for whistleblowers, stronger protections for journalists, stronger protections for publishers to allow that to continue to happen. If we don't, if we continue to have this weak Espionage Act, it could be used against journalists and publishers, and just in its current form. And if they try Assange on these 17 Espionage Act charges, that precedent could be used against other journalists. That is a very serious fear, and I understand they want to make an example of Assange. They want to show you can't just get away with messing with the United States. That if you try and you know even if technically he didn't steal our secrets, right? He basically put up a big sign saying, "Hey, hackers and thieves across the world, you know these are the secrets we want you to steal. Come bring them to us and we'll publish them," right? And gave them advice and coordinated with them and even sometimes employed them, uh, right? So that there's always this plausible deniability, but there is some question from these computer intrusion charges of, was he actually doing some of the hacking himself? He is a hacker, right? He was given a break because of the hacking that he committed, serious charges against the United States when he was a teenager. He was given a break on that one. They don't want to give him a break again. I don't blame them. They want to make an example of him. But we have to do it in a humane way. And we may just have to settle for just giving him a real hard time, putting him through trial, making him sit out the extradition stuff, having to spend a year in British prison, having to spend 7 years. And I mean, degrading the living crap out of WikiLeaks because, I mean, the WikiLeaks site is still up. You can still go there now and look at all the stuff that's been leaked over the years from everybody. Um, but their last release was in August 5th of 2021, and since then, um, their email server's gone down, and they're no longer able to take submissions or have secure chats. So greatly, they were always a small operation. They've been greatly degraded. But there are other organizations picking up the mantle for WikiLeaks, anti-secrecy organizations like DDO Service and others, that are taking up the work that they left off. Uh, so plenty of other groups for U.S. intelligence to be worried about. Um, and but we should have a discussion in another episode about ethical hacking, and that if you are going to hack and steal information, that you only reveal that which should be absolutely revealed, right? And, and justifiably revealed. That you're revealing some type of wrongdoing or corruption. That you're not just dumping, which is what WikiLeaks has done. They just dump it all, right? So they're revealing people's private information. They're revealing, the names of and addresses and phone numbers of, human spies who work for us across the world, right? Our different methods for how we work, right? And and every country in the world has laws against them being spied upon. Like if I try and go and hack into Russia's uh, government computers, they're gonna they're not gonna take too kindly to that. They will take some kind of action in response to me attempting to do that, which I won't do, I promise. Uh, and you can expect that, from any country, and certainly, you know, uh, a more robust response from the better funded, countries that have better funded intelligence organizations. Um, so anyway, he should be prosecuted on the one computer intrusion charge, but he may get off. All right. But I would argue that he's already been made an example of, and if he screws up, you can come at him again, hopefully with a much stronger Espionage Act that will allow you to better target him without risking, uh, endangering legitimate journalists. I would argue that he's been masquerading as a legitimate journalist and publisher. He's neither. Um, and that he is arguably an enemy of the United States. Certainly, that is an opinion that is shared by a large portion of people within the intelligence organizations in the United States. And but he should not be assassinated. He should not be kidnapped. He should be extradited and tried. Uh, and so that is kind of our final conclusion. Absolutely should be treated humanely, and but that if he has to get off, let him off the 17 charges. I know they want to burn him. He can only if he is found guilty of the computer intrusion charge, it's only 5 years. I'm sure they want to send him to jail for 25, 30 or more, um, which they could. Um, if he's found guilty of all the charges and they maxed out the sentences, he could spend that 175 years in prison, right? That's not going to happen because you know, rarely do judges give out max sentences in federal cases. Um, and he may be found guilty. I think there's a case that he could. I think the government does have a case, but I don't think they should make it. It's not an open and shut case. There are a lot of arguments to be made that that he wasn't engaging in espionage. There are arguments to be made there, but there are also specific activities that he engaged in that were very, very different. As far as working with hackers, directing hackers, recruiting hackers, paying hackers, his involvement with Russian intelligence over the years. Um, so, but all that, it may not be enough to convict him, right? And even if you could, it's not worth it. It's just too great a risk to the First Amendment. And if we lose that, we don't get it back, and it's not worth it. If you lose the First Amendment, you lose it all. Um, that we've made an example of them to some degree already, right? And that we will make examples of others moving forward and be able to do so with a better reformed uh, Espionage Act, allowing us to be able to do that while protecting the rights of journalists, publishers, and whistleblowers who do need to be protected. There's still unfair retribution against whistleblowers that has to be addressed. We don't offer enough protections to them now, and we have to find some way for Congress to better address the overclassification of information within the government. Information that should be revealed to the public needs to be revealed in a timely fashion. I know that's difficult. It's a very, 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 very difficult task, but it's also a very important task that should not be ignored. So we will talk about that on another show. So I hope you've enjoyed our discussion about Julian Assange. Um, our next our next episode is going to be about the epidemic of gun violence in the United States and the absurdity of Second Amendment absolutism. The idea that there should be no regulation of firearms whatsoever, and how ridiculous that is, and how preposterous and disgusting that it has been over a decade since there's been passage by Congress of any major gun control legislation. So uh, we're going to talk about that. What what are the most effective measures, like the top five or so? What are the most effective measures, gun control measures, that have been proven to reduce gun violence, and how we can get those enacted and implemented as fast as possible to reduce the epidemic of gun violence in the United States, which is just out of control. 45 people died by gunshots in 2020, 45,000. Like 25,000 were suicides, about 20,000 were murders, 20,000 people uh, in 2020. That's ridiculous. It's unacceptable. We have mass shootings basically every day. Uh, and nothing's being done about it. We have two background check bills sitting in Congress right now uh, that Republicans won't support. Now, there's been talk that there might be some kind of compromise. Senator Chris Murphy, from a Democrat from Connecticut, uh, is working with John Cornyn from Texas to come up with some kind of compromise gun legislation. Murphy says he's encouraged, he's seen more support for action than he has in the past, but we've also heard that before. The Republican Party has stood in extreme opposition to any gun control legislation whatsoever over the last decade. Vote them all out November 8th. Vote them all out. That is the only way that you're going to have a real, meaningful gun reform in this country. The people who have stood in the way of us doing anything about it whatsoever, even just improving our background checks, just that, stand in the way of that, right? Just that alone should have no business serving in public office. They are unfit to serve. Vote them all out. All right. Democrats are not perfect, but they do support doing something about it. Right. They are willing to use different tools to address the situation, not just pretend that there's nothing you can do and hoping it goes away. That is unacceptable. It's inexcusable. And no person who thinks that doing nothing about it, or blaming doors, wanting to arm teachers. If the cops can't even bring down a shooter, but they want a teacher to. It takes dozens of cops to bring down one shooter with an AR-15. Right? It's hard. It's hard to take down somebody who's wearing body armor with an AR-15. It is. Right? Who's dug in somewhere. That's not easy to do. And that's just one person. One 18-year-old kid did that. Right? Just easily murdered one of those people in Uvalde. Right? Kid should have never had the two AR-15s he bought on his 18th birthday. He had a history of violence. He had a history of mental illness. He should have never been able to get them. We have to make that. That's our main problem: is that people getting guns who shouldn't have them. People who shouldn't have them. People who are a danger to others, or are violent to others. People who are violent criminals. People who are domestic abusers. People who are a danger to themselves and others. They should not be able to get a hold of firearms. And that's basic. That's basic. And it's anything else is unacceptable. Vote them all out. We're going to talk about what we need to do, what we need to pass to vote them all out. We're going to talk about how ridiculous the claim is that some people make, that the Constitution claims that the right to to bear arms, right? The the people's right to bear arms shall not be infringed, right? That means you shouldn't have any regulation whatsoever. We're talking about how ridiculous that is from a rational standpoint, and that is completely indefensible, and that all these people got to go. All these people who have spouted this nonsense for all these years have blood on their hands. They got to go. Vote them out. Never let them back in. Vote in people that have conscience and responsibility who will do something about it. We're going to talk about that on the next episode. And after that, we're talking about Edward Snowden. Okay, that'll be the following episode after the gun reform episode. We're going to talk about Snowden. He fled to Russia in 2015 after revealing all kinds of secret NSA, CIA, and other intelligence information, which revealed a lot of misdeeds and illegal activities by NSA mass spying programs, but also at the same time revealed vital information, vital national security information to our enemies as well. He has been charged with espionage charges and is in exile, hiding basically from the United States in Russia. Should he be pardoned? Did his disclosures, uh, his whistleblowing behavior, was it justified? Him disclosing all the national security information was it justified in breaking his agreement with the United States government to keep those secrets? Was he justified in releasing them? Was releasing the vital national security information a smaller evil compared to that of the evil he revealed? Right? Should he be pardoned? Should he be prosecuted? If he is to be pardoned, Could he even come back? Would Russia let him leave? So we're going to talk about all that. That, while it's related to Assange, is a completely different story. So we're going to talk about all that, and we're looking forward to it. And I hope you've enjoyed the show. I've enjoyed it. So until next time, take care of each other. We haven't been doing a good job of it, but we can do better. We can and we must. Until next time, talk to you soon.